What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at my season review for the 2021-22 season. Talk about my final rank, how it kind of compares to previous years. We're going to look at a few of the tools as well that are out there in the FPL community, so you can have a look at how your season went, where it went right, where it went wrong, and stuff like that as well. So it's going to be a very interactive video, and then we'll take a look on the FPL pages, some of the really good game weeks and some of the not so good game weeks, again, where things went right, things went wrong. So if you enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I've got a few videos planned for the next week or so, and then I'll just play it by ear by how kind of popular they are ahead of the new season. We might wait until closer to the game launch to do a few more. I'm just going to take it as it goes, basically. So let's look at the final ranking. So for this season, the one right at the top, it was 9,975. That was my final rank. The kind of satisfying thing about that is not only is it another top 10k finish, it's also the highest rank that I had all season. So I know people didn't necessarily believe this when I said it last year, but last year was my highest rank, 1,294. I was like 300th place at some point, but it kind of got, I don't know if boring is the right word, but I just wasn't really going anywhere for ages. I was like 300, then I was 400, then I was back up a little bit, then I was back down a little bit, and once I got to around 1,000, I just didn't really move at all. There was no big swings for me either way. So because your final rank, while still brilliant and still my best one ever, because it was lower than ranks earlier on in the season, it kind of just petered out a little bit for me. I think when you're making constant progression, so basically when you're doing worse earlier on in the season and then you start to do better as it goes on, that just feels better. I think psychologically that just feels better. So because I was 10,300 and something in game week 7, and I never got back to that point until the last game week and then got inside the top 10k. That was an extremely satisfying season. And I feel like maybe it's recency bias, but it just feels better than the season before. This is going to be a bit of a self-indulgent video, by the way. I'm very happy that's now 2 top 10k finishes in a row. Really happy with that. I'm also now slightly more annoyed about my 2019-20 season. That's the season where my account got hacked. I was forced to use my wildcard and stuff like that. I did make some very bad decisions that season, but it now just looks so much worse when all the ranks around it are pretty good. We've got like top 5 in 2016-17, then 21k, 12k, that big 162k, and then 2 back-to-back top 10k finishes. So I think when there's so much noise about my team, like every single week I see it, like your team looks rubbish, not from everyone of course, but your team looks rubbish, why are you keeping that player, why are you not bringing this player in, that player's out of form, this player's in form, you shouldn't be captaining that player, you should be captaining this player. I think I've got really good at just kind of not ignoring it, but not letting it play into my thinking for my team, and I've been pretty consistent, but also had quite a bit of luck, right? You need luck to get to these higher ranks as well. Yes, there's some skill involved, of course, but you need a little bit of luck, and we're going to see that when we look at the tools. So yeah, top 10k again for the second season in a row. I'd love to get the hat trick next year. It's getting harder and harder. There'll be even more engaged FPL managers next year, but yeah, let's see how it goes. Very happy with that. Let me know below what you finished on. So this is one of the tools that I wanted to use to kind of go through my season. Like I said, it's going to be quite interactive. So this is FPLoptimize.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'll also leave a link to the Twitter account of Sivert, who was the person that created this website as well. It's really handy, and apologies if I've mispronounced that name in any way. So all those links will be down in the description below. You just need your FPL ID. So if you go onto the FPL page, click on points, then click on Game Week History on the right, then in the URL there'll be a number. That's your FPL ID. That's what you need to put into here. So my FPL ID is 2. So I was the second person to create a team this year, basically, which you think is meaningless, but actually if the points are equal and transfers are equal as well, it then comes down to FPL ID, I think, in terms of where you rank. So it can have some importance, but probably not massive importance. I'm just a bit of a nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'm going to make this a bit bigger. This is my team of the season. So these are the players that scored me the most points. There's a few interesting things here. I think Ramsdale only on 55 points. That's not that high. Like in previous seasons, like Nick Pope's been like a season keeper, and excuse the pun, right? Goalkeeper, season keeper, etc. Martinez, obviously, really brilliant, cheap goalkeeper that a lot of us had for a long way through the season. For me, I started with Sanchez. I then moved on to Ramsdale. When I wildcarded fairly early, I went to Jose Sarr. I had Dubravka, who did really well for me as well, and I picked up Edison towards the end. So this was not a freak season, but it was a different season in how things work, because there were so many double game weeks because of the COVID postponements. there was a bit of change on goalkeepers, which you don't usually get. And I also don't think, we can have a look in a minute, that there was really like a standout super cheap 4.5. Like again, Sanchez did well for a time, but it wasn't like Emi Martinez from the season before. So I think that's why the goalkeeper in Ramsdale was quite low. Obviously, you got the likes of Trent and Cancelo. They were kind of in my team for a lot this season. Trent, like absolutely ridiculous point scoring again. Interestingly, Reese James is the next highest on 59 points. Now, obviously, a lot of us had some ups and downs with James. We can see exactly how that went in a minute. Because on this page, there's a tool which lets you show you when players hauled and when you own them. So you can see just how often you missed out the Reese James hauls. But again, there wasn't that consistent defender. I guess one takeaway from me is probably that I need to give Robertson a bit more consideration. I know he's expensive. He probably will be the second highest priced defender in the game next year behind Trent. But he's so consistent. And I think in a team that now has Diaz, Jotter, Firmino, and obviously Mane and Salah as well, unless players get injured, there's going to be rotation there. And I think outside of Salah, unless Mane is priced really cheap, you know, Diaz might be worth a punt, and obviously he does look first choice right now. There could be rotation there, and it might just well be worth getting Robertson in and just leaving it at that. Obviously, he was injured at the start of the season, so that's another reason he wasn't in from the get-go. But it wasn't until late on this season that I picked him up. So that's an interesting point, I think. In midfield, obviously Salah, captain 19 times, as expected, right? He's done really well again this season. 5th season in a row over 200 points. This was actually his second highest point scoring ever. Right, the guy is ridiculous. He's a joke. Then Son, who I didn't actually own that much, but I picked up a lot of his hauls later on in the season. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Saka, one of the most consistent players in my team. Obviously, early on, he wasn't doing the business. And if you've watched my channel all season, you know how annoyed I was with Smith Rowe. But in the end, Saka was super consistent. The only nailed-on Arsenal attacker, really. But maybe Odegaard now, you could say as well. But he's the main man. So that was decent. Jota, 89 points, pretty good. Obviously, again, he was picked up before Luis Diaz was part of the Liverpool team, and obviously through injuries as well. He was playing quite a lot, especially with kind of African Cup of Nations as well. Rafinha, of course, and I think strikers goes to show just how bad the strikers were. That Antonio, who after like we can check this later, but after like game week whatever it was, 8 or 9, just barely seemed to score goals at all for the whole rest of the season, and yet he's still in there as the most points from a forward at 122. Obviously, he did have those really big scores early on, but it just goes to show how bad forwards were. Okay, if you had Kane towards the end, he might have done okay, but overall, they were just not worth the money. I captained Ronaldo 4 times. I don't think he hit many hauls for me either. So unless something changes next year, unless we get some kind of decent mid-price strikers, or some of the strikers like Callum Wilson, for example, can stay fit, because I think he looks really interesting for Newcastle next year, might have to go cheap with forwards again. And just like I think FPL really need to be careful about their prices next year. Defenders need to go up in price. It's too easy to kind of just try and fit them all in and go super cheap with the forwards. They need to make us make a decision, right? They need to make the forwards tempting, but not so obvious that you just go for it. And they need to make the defenders expensive so they're not just obvious picks. We need to go into next season where we're putting Salah and Trent in our team, and then we're thinking, wow, I don't even know if I can afford a second defender, like expensive one. And if I can, what sacrifices do I have to make elsewhere? We need to make those decisions, because right now, the forward, like I can say right now, forward's just not worth it. Put your money in defence, put your money in midfield. It's too easy to do. So that probably needs to change. And then just on the bench, Dubravka 31, Jimenez 62. He did okay for me for a while. I got very lucky with that period before the Game Week 26 wildcard where I had him in and he kind of scored or assisted most weeks, even though he's pretty rubbish for most of the season. So I got a bit lucky with him. Alonso and Doherty, if he'd stayed fit, I'm sure would have been absolutely brilliant. I'm not going to go through everything on this page. There's a lot of stuff, and I'm not sure I completely understand all of it, but there's a lot of good stuff. So captains, right, so you can filter this table. These are the I think these are all, yeah, you can go through the different pages, right? These are all the players that were in my team at some point this season. Like players like Jakupovic and Alanga, they were just on the bench on free hits and stuff like that. But you can see all the players that were in the team. And I only captained, so Salah 19 times, Ronaldo 4, Son only 3. That almost feels criminal now. Fernandes twice, Antonio twice, Jota twice, then Richarlison, double game week. Havertz, double game week. Lukaku, I can't remember when that was. That might have been game week 7. I think when he played against Southampton, should have hauled and got absolutely nothing. Rafinha, double game week. Weghorst, double game week. King, double game week as well. So I only actually captained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different players. And most of that was forced from double game week. So my captains next year, if there's less double game weeks, I'm sure there'll be less total amount of captains, right? And I'll always go for the big hitters. I do think like going for a differential is nice if it pays off, but it's so much easier to get points from the reliable players like Salah, Ronaldo to a certain extent, like Son, Fernandes, who did really well. And one of the reason he was captain twice, one of them was the double game week, right? Game week 25. So that's why a lot of these players, not Jotter and Antonio, but a lot of the others were captain just for that. And I think with double game weeks, we remember. I feel like with FPL managers, they tend to remember the really bad ones. So like, oh, we all went for Weghorst and it didn't work out. We all went for Josh King and Dennis, it didn't work out. Double game weeks are overrated. Well, let's remember Richarlison smashing 19 points. Let's remember Ronaldo and Fernandes smashing points in game week 25. Game week 36, double game week captains. Okay, Salah didn't work very well. De Bruyne and Son did. So I think we try and play double game weeks down, or people try and play them down when it doesn't go well, but they are always worth targeting. Like Havertz wasn't a massive score, like 16 points, but no one else apart from Alonso in my team really did that well from the double game week. So again, it was extra points, and you get 2 bites of the cherry because of both games. So I do think they're well worth it. Like Richarlison one game and getting me 38 points was kind of crazy. So that was interesting. And Trent was actually in my team the most. You can see how often they were in the lineup. Trent was in for 30 games. Salah 27. Obviously, a big part of that played into the fact that Salah went to African Cup of Nations. If he hadn't gone there, he would have been in just as much as Trent. Saka, Cancelo, Antonio for 22 weeks, even though he didn't do that well. And Rafinha for 16 as well, which I'm sure a lot of people will kind of make a mistake. Reese James as well, 15 times. I feel like he was injured for a lot of that, but he was in there quite a bit. Foden was 13 games. He did okay. Ramsdale was only in for 12. It's not very often that goalkeepers have that short of a time in your team over a season. I think it will be different next year as long as we don't get a lot of postponements. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go through absolutely all of this. There's a few other interesting points for the video. So this bit here, this is timing of ownership. This is where you can see where you went really wrong with a player. So green is when they were in your lineup, so when you started them or when they came in. Purple, whatever colour you want to call that, is when they were on the bench. And then these hauls here is when you didn't own them. So I didn't own Salah in game week 21, for example. And I got, again, you could say I got a little bit lucky that he didn't have a massive haul. So obvious for Salah, right? I had him for a lot of his points, like a lot of us did. Same with Trent Alexander-Arnold. I didn't bench him for any of his big hauls or anything like that. More interesting players. So Son, for example, is really interesting. He again, just had a very consistent season. Obviously, at the start of the season, they had a different manager. They didn't have Conte straight away, but he continued to do pretty well. But I didn't own him. I only owned him towards the end of the season, so 2021. Then I dropped him again, and then I had him for pretty much all his kind of hauls throughout game week 26 from the wild card all through to game week 32. I dropped him for the double in 33 and 34. And I got a little bit lucky that he didn't get any points there. But unfortunately, the luck didn't continue into game week 35 or 36. So these really hurt me. These 2 hauls here really didn't, it just didn't go well for me at all. And I could have got him back in game week 35 and I didn't. And I would have captained him. That would have meant an even bigger rank. But I think it's important not to react badly when that happens. Like I think some people will say, well, you should have just got him in for game week 36, 35. You should never have dropped him in the first place. That's fair enough, but I didn't panic about it. And when I needed to, I got him back on the free hit, and I had him back for game week 38 as well. Like it would have been very easy in game week 38 to just say, look, you've missed the big hauls. Let's back against him as a differential. But I went for the obvious pick, and in the end, that is what helped me get into the top 10k. Yes, it was obviously helped by the fact that Salah was injured. If Salah wasn't injured, it would have been a bigger move to make. But I think it just shows you just not. There's no use in being stubborn in this game. If things go wrong, you shouldn't then double down necessarily. If Son's a good pick, he's a good pick, no matter what points you did or didn't get the previous games. And I think that's important. That's why I don't pay too much attention to form and stuff like that either. There's probably a few more interesting players. So I think, where's Reese James? Let's plot Reese James. So I missed his big haul in game week 2. I didn't have him for game week 9. Bearing in mind, what happened for me is I wildcarded in game week 7, and at that point, Reese James and Chilwell weren't really options. I know some people went for them, but they weren't necessarily always in the team, or they'd been injured and stuff like that. And then they went big. Game week 9, 10, 11, 12, Reese James in particular, and I missed him for all those hauls. He got like 60 odd points over that 4 game week period, and then I picked him up in game week 13, nothing. On the bench for 14, nothing in 15, 16, a couple of decent scores in 17, 18, and he basically did nothing until game week 28, where I did get him in, so I'm happy about that. But realistically, James was one of those just frustrating players where a lot of the time I didn't own him, he did well, and a lot of the time I did, he didn't. I don't regret bringing him in, and again, I wouldn't be stubborn about that next year. If he's fit from the start, and if Chilwell is fit from the start, they are both going to be great options. They're almost certainly both going to be cheaper than Trent and Robertson, and they will be, I don't know if you can call them value picks, but they could be more valuable than Trent and Robertson, and I won't let this affect me, how bad this went at all, even though it didn't go great. Let's just look at a couple of other players. So Jotter, again, pretty decent scoring early on, didn't own him. I did get him in for quite a few of his hauls. This is when he was more nailed on because of player injuries, African Cup of Nations and stuff like that. He also continued to do okay-ish here in 31, but then the points did peter out. So I did pretty well with Jotter. And again, it's about, I think with players like Jotter, and like you'll see me go to Man City players quite a lot. Like I started with Mahrez and Gundogan. I had Foden for a lot of the season. When players like that, if you can nail them at the right time, they will get you big points. But I do think there's maybe an argument to be had, or a conversation to be had, that it's better just getting someone in that's going to consistently start, where you don't have to worry about those benchings that may not get as big scores, or may not have the potential to get those big scores that players like Jota and that do, but are more consistent, and you have to use less transfers on them. But when it's a situation like this, in this middle bit here, where there are injuries, you know he's pretty much nailed on. I think they're absolutely worth getting because of their price. So that was Jota as well. So we'll leave that there. A few more things I want to scroll down to. So this is kind of how risky, I guess, my play was against different sample size. So this is the top 10,000. So these are, if you scroll over, you'll see at the bottom, if I scroll down a bit more, when you hover over a dot, it shows you the game week that it is, what top bets you made and what top bets were made against you. So you can see the weeks where like you maybe went a little bit different. So this is game week 1, for example. This is game week 28. Obviously, I bet on Rafinha. It didn't go very well. But overall, in game week 28, I beat the crowd by about 20 points from the top 10k sample. And then if you're lower than the line, that's the week where you made losses. So mine, more than 20-point loss in this week. This will be, yeah, game week 36. No bench boost, no De Bruyne, no Son. That is where things kind of went wrong. And my best week was this one at the top, game week 37, where I made a huge gain. Right, I had Richarlison, Vardy, Maddison, and players like that. I'll show you the number one. I'll show you the number one overall in a minute, how they did. But ultimately, I didn't go that different. I didn't make too many different picks, and I do think I think people word it incorrectly. Like at the start of the season, people will always say things like, I'll just go for the template. It's not about template. It's about picking the best players. And if there's a player that's only 5% owned, and they have got great fixtures, great underlying numbers, expected goals, expected assists, you get them in. It's not about getting the players that are highly... The players that are highly owned are usually because they're the best players, right? So the two kind of tie in together. But it's just about making those best picks. So if for game week 37... Richarlison's got a double game week. They're both at home. Vardy and Maddison, they've got no Europe anymore. They're looking likely to start against Watford. They are good players. I didn't check what ownership they had. I didn't care about anything like that. It's just about trying to make the best picks, which I know sounds obvious, but I do think people overthink that. And you could argue that by not having Son in game week 36, that was a really bad move. And do you know what? I wouldn't probably argue too much against you. This graph here is interesting. So this is my predicted points to what actual points I got. So I think there's another graph somewhere. Let me just try and find it. That might be the only one. Okay, yeah, that's the only one. So I was kind of similar-ish. Basically, I got a little bit lucky for my rank, which is what you need, right? You can make all the good picks you want. It's like I said about De Bruyne in 36. He was a good pick, but ultimately got a little bit lucky. Same in 37. Richarlison, Vardy, Maddison, they were good picks, but to get the score they did in that 1 week where a lot of people didn't have them, that was very lucky, and that's what you need. So it didn't correlate too badly. And this is all based on expected points from FPL Review, essentially. I just want to see if there's anything else I wanted to go through on it. I think that might be it. Yeah, that's it for this page. If you want to check it out, this is FPL Optimized. I actually have the ID for the world number 1 So I'll come on to this now. And we can have a look at their graph as well for kind of just how different they went. So this was their top players. So they had James, but they got more points from him, so they must have had him for those bigger hauls. So that's one thing they did really well. Captain Fernandez 3 times, nailed all those scores by the looks of it. 114 points. Bowen as well. Like Bowen, for me, I missed out on a lot of his points. That was a big loss. And then he's got Kane and Antonio. So just, obviously, you're world number 1, right? You're going to have all the players. You need that bit of luck. So they are kind of the difference makers there. Had more points from James, more points from Ramsdale. Had Bowen. Bowen wasn't even in my team of the season. And that's just some of the difference there. And I'm sure if we go down to timings, if we go to Reese James, yeah, you see here, these big hauls in game week 9, 10, 11 and 12, Jamie, who won FPL, they had James in the team. They nailed this big haul here. They nailed this big haul here. It was only this one in game week 2 that they really missed. And obviously still had Salah and stuff like that. And if you look at this graph, so if you remember my graph, right, a lot of my dots were to the top left. More of Jamie's dots are to the right, which means they made some gains, but they made it with different players. And this game week here, right at the top, let me just scroll down. This is game week 36. De Bruyne captain, bench boost, Son in there. Mane and Luis Diaz in there. They were all kind of differential picks, and that absolutely smashed it. That is more than 90. They beat the crowd from that sample of the top 10,000 by 90 points. In that game week. That is the big things that help you win FPL. And look, it's hard to predict them. It is. You just, again, it's a little bit of luck. Some really good picks. Diaz, Mane, De Bruyne, all great picks. Foster on the bench boost, good pick. But you need that little bit of luck to get such a big score. So that's just the difference from like what the world number 1 did to what I did. So yeah, that is a great tool. FPLoptimize.com. Let's have a quick look on the FPL site. Okay, I want to take you through some of the weeks on the FPL site as well. We'll just go through a couple of them because obviously there's 38 game weeks. It would take way too long to do them all. I might do a kind of road to victory video for the world number 1 as well. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments below. Again, it'd have to be a separate video. But yeah, let's go for a few weeks. So I started off game week 1 with 100 points, right? Really, really, really good start to the season. Obviously, in game week 1, your game week rank, 377k, is the same as your overall rank. If you could get 377k game week rank every week, you'd win FPL, right? So that was an incredible start. And the team was pretty good. I think I went for Tsimikas like a lot of people did because he was a very cheap enabler. We knew Robertson was injured. Obviously, there was a bit of... not hope that Robertson would be injured, but I hope that Tsimikas would get a few starts. And he did start in game week 2 as well, if I just scroll to that. And he got 11 points, along with Trent's 12. So if you remember at the start of the season, it was kind of Salah, Tsimikas, and Trent, or some people went for Jotter instead of Tsimikas. And Tsimikas actually did really well for us, for those of us that went there. And I think that most of the team was solid picks. Salah, obviously. Fernandez off the back of last season. Yes, for the rest of the season, he didn't necessarily do too well, but he absolutely smashed it out of the park in game week 1. Sure, there was obviously a lot of expectations for him. It didn't pan out at all. Man United ended up being awful. So that was a bad pick, but I don't think it was a bad game week 1 pick. And Antonio and Benrahma, like, what a double up. Like, in FPL... I talk about luck a lot. You do need, like, even the luck at the start of the season really helps out, because in game week 1 and 2 and 3, etc., that's when you've got the most engaged managers. So if you have a game week that starts like this, first of all, you've got all the players that everyone else, or most of the players that everyone else is probably looking at bringing in. So they're bringing them in. You're getting to save transfers on those players because you already own them. They're also helping you increase your team value. So even in game week 1, you can get a bit of luck that helps you with the rest of the season. You can build up that team value early. It doesn't mean that in game week 1 you win FPL, or that if you have a bad game week then you can never recover. But there are little things that do help. So I think players like maybe Callum Wilson, Danny Ings, they did well at the start of the season. People bringing them in, increase your team value. You're not having to use transfers on them. Happy days. So yeah, Benrahma and Antonio double up was really good early on. Not for very long. I sold Benrahma pretty quickly. And obviously it was Jared Bowen that went and smashed it. But for the first few game weeks, Benrahma and Antonio double up was ridiculously lucky, I would say. And then the 2 picks, Gundogan and Mahrez, who blanked, not ideal. Maybe I shouldn't have gone for Man City players from the off, but again, it's trying to get those explosive returns in when no one else has got them. And I think the start of the season, like if I just click into Mahrez, like, okay, Spurs game week 1, but then they had Norwich, and they did beat Norwich 5-0, but Mahrez got benched. And I don't think Gundogan, yeah, he didn't do anything either. He played 68 minutes and was benched. So it was trying to get some of that Norwich action, and Man City did smash them, but unfortunately I had the wrong 2 picks for that game, and that's just sometimes how it goes. In another universe, someone's gone for Gundogan and Mahrez in game week 1. They've smashed Norwich 5-0 in the second game week, and Gundogan and Mahrez have both come away with double-digit hauls. It's just how it works sometimes, and I think Tony was a perfectly viable pick as well. Obviously, it didn't go too well for me right at the start, 2 blanks in a row, but he did have some game weeks where he was pretty decent, but it was very sporadic. It wasn't kind of steady returns, I would say, for game week 1. So game week 1 went pretty well. If I just click game week history, that'll be quicker. I actually had a brilliant start to the season. Like, it was really good. If I just make it a little bit bigger, I finished in game week 7. I was 10,378. So I went from 98k to 52,000. So game week 6 was this week. I don't even know why I went up so much. Like Veltman, Salah, I bought in Sarr. That was a really good move. Benrahma to Sarr. He got 9 points that week. I bought him in for game week 5 against Norwich. He got me 15 points, and then he got 9 points against Newcastle, and then I sold him on my wildcard in game week 7. Again, sometimes you just get lucky. You bring a player in for 2 good fixtures, Norwich and Newcastle. Obviously, Newcastle had different manager and stuff like that at the time. And yeah, you get 24 points across 2 game weeks. Sometimes you get lucky, and that's really nice. So I went from 98k to 52. So it was 100. It's 200 to 100 to 50 to 10. Now this is kind of where it all went wrong, and the reason for that is I wildcarded in game week 7. Azpilicueta got returns even though they conceded. Mbombo was in there as well. Remember him? I got Jimenez, and Jimenez did me really well. But if you remember, this was the week where I got that late information, which there's probably still some weirdos out there that think I kept it to myself. I got late information about Ronaldo being benched. I'd already had the idea of wildcarding in my head, and I knew what team I would go for. And so I wildcarded into this team. It did me really well in game week 7, but I just about wildcarded a week or 2 early, because when people wildcarded in game week 8, they went for Chilwell and Reese James, and they absolutely smashed it, and Rudiger and Azpilicueta just got left behind. So that is why in game week 7, I had this really big rank rise to 10,378. That was my second highest rank I had all season, apart from the final week. And then it just went down and down. Game week 8, 13,000. And this week in game week 8, Azpilicueta 6 points. I sold Rudiger. I think it was in game week 9 where Chelsea smashed Norwich 7-0. And James, goal. Chilwell, goal. Mount obviously got three goals as well, and they got the clean sheet. So Reese James and Chilwell absolutely smashed it, and they continue to do it for a few weeks. So that is why I went from 50k to 10 to 13 to 36 to 88, and just went downhill and downhill. I think the good thing for me here is I didn't panic at any point. I just kept making similar decisions. I don't think I played this season any different to last season, and my worst rank of the season was 100. After the initial ones, right? I never, for next season, don't worry about your opening game week ranks. It doesn't matter, right? The points are so close together. There's so many people playing. It takes like another 10, 15 game weeks until you know roughly where you are. And in game week 15, I had basically what I would call my worst rank of the season, 190k. And then it just kept going up and up and up. I just kept making good decisions. I felt like I made some good decisions here. Got a little bit unlucky missing out on Chilwell and James's massive returns, and I kept on making good decisions. It just happens that the decisions went better for me, and like I said, that's what happens in FPL. So I went from 190 to 156 to 108 to 78, then 50, and I found it very hard to get off this 50k mark, and it was the game week 26 wildcard that really did it for me. So I went from 52 to 83k. And then this was a double game week 25. That's when I captained Fernandes. Remember, he got that late goal against Brighton. That was happy days. I had Bowen at this point as well. And then game week 26 was kind of a bit of a turning point in my season, because after this, I didn't really take too many hits. A -4 in game week 29. That was to get, I think, Reese James in. And then a few -4s, 33, 34, 35, and 36. But hits were more viable this season. And I think people that do season reviews and their takeaways, I need to take less hits or I need to take more hits, are kind of missing the point. You take hits when you need them. Like, sometimes you'll get injuries out of the blue. Sometimes there'll be suspensions out of the blue. Late team news, right? Sometimes there'll be double game weeks like this season you weren't prepared for. Hits were more viable. So I reduced the amount that I needed. Because if you remember, around game week 26, people were taking like -12s, -16s, -20s. But around this period here,
the hits were needed because of the double game weeks, and I did pretty well off game week 26. I know I didn't obviously, we know I didn't triple captain Salah, but in the end I think I made the right decision. Saka continued to smash it, Lacazette, I should have gone Gabriel instead of Tierney that week, but it is what it is, and I continued to kind of rise up, 40, 25, then I stuck around 20 for a bit, then I got into the 10s, and obviously game week 36, no bench boost, no Son, no De Bruyne, 84 points just wasn't good enough, and that's when I dropped down. And then obviously the best week of my season was kind of game week 37 with the free hit, and that helped me just propel from 32k back up to 15k. So yeah, I mean, what are the takeaways? I think never give up, of course, keep making good decisions, and just hope that you get a little bit luckier than you have been. I don't think wildcarding in game week 7 and not having James or Chilwell was a bad move, but it definitely was a bad outcome because they did smash it. It's not the only reason I dropped in rank, but I remember that being a pretty big reason. Outside of that, I attacked all the double game weeks. Apart from game week 31 when Weghorst had Man City, I captained a double game week at every single time, and I would do that every single season because the expected points are just always going to be higher. So yeah, pretty good overall. This is my final game week 38 team, 82 points, very nice. Overall, a good season. I'm happy with it when I'm happy with the content that we created on this channel. There'll be loads more next year as well, so if you do enjoy it and you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Another top 10k finish, hopefully I'll get the same next year. I think I'm pretty consistent, right? I'm not the best FPL manager in the world, I'm not the best presenter, I'm not the best YouTuber, but I'm consistent at least. And if we look at previous season ranks, I think I'm pretty happy with that. It's not like I've had loads and loads of bad seasons and then got like really lucky for 1 or 2 seasons. I've been pretty consistent. I'm pretty happy with that. And look, sometimes it goes bad, but you hope that most of the time it goes right. So if you enjoyed that video and it was helpful, please do give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll be back soon with some more.